If it sounds good, it is good. Practically an audio myth these days. You hear people spouting that all the time. And you know what? It is true in the big picture. If it does sound good, fantastic. That's what we're going for. And almost any processing or anything you do, that's what we're heading toward. But there's so many cases where that is just not the case, where the person who is using that as their almost excuse for, well, it sounds good to me, or no client has ever complained. I've heard that so many times, and it's still, that's not a great reference point. So we're going to talk about if it sounds good, it is good, because too many times it's misused and misunderstood. So this is Don Barnes, Audio Barnyard. I'm going to be helping you grow all natural, organic, super nutritious audio. Use the manure to grow your VO crops, but don't wallow in it. And of course, my mission is always to inspire, educate, motivate VO artists to be their best, with a little entertainment thrown in for seasoning. All right, so let's get back into this here. So too often when I hear this, oh, if it sounds good, it is good, that's almost code word for somebody saying, yeah, I'm happy, this is what I'm doing, it's pretty good, it sounds good to me. And here's the problem with that. Let's digress. Let's look at it from a different point of view. Most people would not necessarily buy this statement. If it tastes good, it is good. Okay. Hey, what about Doritos or white chocolate mocha frappuccino? Those are like 500 calories, 64 grams of sugar. That's 16 teaspoons. Or how about, hey, you go into a movie and you've gotten that popcorn, which we all love, with that buttery topping? Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about that for a second. First thing, for my age challenge friends, when back a while ago, people went to the theater all the time to watch a movie. They didn't just Netflix and chill. They actually went to this building and sat there with 100 other people and sat in a chair and ate very, very expensive popcorn and nuts and fruit and candy and whatever. If you get that popcorn, and I don't know, I get it every time I go, there's this place where you can go over and you can just run this bowl underneath, or this bucket, excuse me. You run the bucket under this thing that drips buttery flavoring on top of your popcorn. And man, I've seen people, and I was guilty. When I was younger, I just put tons of that stuff. I mean, I almost could have just gotten a glass and drank the stuff. It was just a little excessive, we might say. But that buttery topping, it does taste good. But is it good? Well, you know what? I did a little research for this, and I went out because I knew that, hey, it's not butter. So for whatever the good, bad, indifferent about butter, the stuff that's in that is worse. So I went and got an ingredients list. There's some for the stuff that they use in movie theaters. And here's one brand, and I can't pronounce half of it, so I got somebody else to do that for me. So here's the basic ingredients list for this butter-flavored popcorn topping.
Partially hydrogenated soybean oil, beta-carotene, buttery flavoring, TBHQ or tertiary butyl hydroquinone, and polydimethylsiloxane.
Yeah, okay. I can't even pronounce some of those words, but hey, if it tastes good, it is good, right? So I asked her, hey, find out a little bit about those ingredients and let me know the inside story. And here's what she came up with.
TBHQ, or tertiary butyl hydroquinone, is a synthetic preservative that prevents changes to color and flavor. And polydimethylsiloxane is a silicon-based polymer that's used in this application as a defoaming agent.
Ooh, defoaming agents for my food. All right, so, obviously, man, I don't know about you, but I've eaten way more of that stuff over my lifetime than I should have. I was going to say, hey, look how I turned out, but that's really not a good standard. But I digress. So first thing is, I can't even pronounce those words. I had someone else pronounce them for me and make sure that they could say it somewhat accurately. But butyl hydrocorzine, whatever. So a synthetic the bottom line is, hey, that stuff tastes good. Doritos taste good. I like I like a Starbucks, one of those things that kind of, it has a woof of coffee in it, but it's mostly a bunch of sugar and a bunch of other things. Okay, they taste great. But few of us would go, wow, that's really great. And so I'm going to judge all my food by how it tastes. Now, there's a total balance on that because great food can taste absolutely great. So it's not this black or white. If it tastes good, it is good. If it tastes good, fantastic. That's a great starting point. We really would love all our food to taste good. But you will notice this other thing. My grandfather, who's been gone for 20, 30 years at this point, he, as he matured, let's just say, as he got a lot older, he started salting his food before he'd even taste it. And I always thought it was weird as, hey, why don't you taste that first? I didn't say that. He's my grandfather. But he would never taste his food. He would just sprinkle extra salt on it. And then as I got a little older, I read some articles and I found out that as people get older, very often their taste buds don't work as well. And my grandfather had been a smoker much of his life. And so what I've read about that, I've never smoked like that. Smoking causes people to not have the same kind of taste buds. So he's naturally going to add more salt to it. Well, using him as well, this is the amount of salt that it takes. This is what tastes good. And what tastes good to him is totally distorted based on his previous experience. And the same thing happens in audio. If you listen on these Beats headphones that the kids seem to love, and I use that in a loving term, mostly the younger set likes these Beats headphones. They're very bass heavy. All the ones I've listened to, it's like, wow, is that ever out of proportion? Now, most of us are listening on systems that have their own little anomalies, we'll just say, or the room that they're in distorts the sound, or the playback system. There's just 100 little variables and moving parts in that. So if it sounds good, it is good, is absolutely correct if you have somebody that has a great frame of reference. People that have been in recording studios and people that have been around the business for a while, they know what good sound is. They may not know why it sounds good. They may not know what it takes to make it sound good, but they've had some experience listening. And almost anybody that's been in this business for more than 6 months or a year, they listen to things they recorded a year or two ago, and they're like, "Wow, I can't believe the background noise, the mouth noise, the room tone, all these little things that somebody who's newer or somebody who doesn't have fantastic hearing. My grandfather didn't have great taste buds at a certain point in his life." It's the same kind of thing where depending on what you've been exposed to younger, your "this sounds great" might be totally distorted. And we start off, most of us now, here, have you ever heard anybody say this? "I don't like the sound of my voice." Well, especially when recorded, right? They hear themselves on tape. They hear themselves on tape. Okay, sorry. For my younger friends, it used to be tape. They heard themselves recorded. And what happens is I don't sound like me when I hear it back on the playback systems. And you don't sound like you when you hear yourself back. We all know that if you've been in this business a little while. If you're newer to it, you'll go, "That's weird. It doesn't sound like me." We start off with a warped perspective on how we sound. Why is that? It's because when we hear ourselves, we are projecting sound out our mouth, but it also is vibrating our skull and jaw and uh, chest cavity. Our body is making the sound, but what we hear is a combination of what's coming out of our mouth, and we also hear some of it from inside. So it just sounds different. And it's combined together into one thing that we've heard our whole life. Inside my head, I sound more masculine than I sound to you. Okay. And that's just the way it goes. We all have that same thing. My voice is deeper to me than it sounds to you. Now, I know what it sounds like because I've heard it 10,000 times doing my YouTube videos and recording enough over the years to go, "Oh, no, that's not how I sound. I actually know it. And you will too about yours." But at first, almost everybody is a little bit surprised at how they sound when they hear themselves recorded and played back. It just doesn't sound right. But you've heard the whole rest of the world. So if you have a brother, a cousin, a sister, if you're female, sister, but if you have a sibling or a relative who has your same voice, I mean, they don't sound the same to you and me. They sound different. So we start with a warped perspective, and then we have this kind of little standard where everybody's saying, "Well, if it sounds good, it is good." Just you have to take that with a grain of salt. So a couple things we really want to think about here. You can get away with almost anything in audio. And the one problem that you end up with is that people succeed with poor quality audio. I get away with all sorts of stuff just because of my beauty. Okay. Yeah. I know you, hopefully that's in jest. Um, no, but it works where in some situations, my message can be strong enough that my audio quality won't bother most people. But if I'm on the hiring end of it, I'm a buyer and I have to listen to me or you. And let's pretend, just for discussion purposes, our two voices are similar enough. They'd like your delivery better than mine. That's beside the point. But pretend, work with me here, that we are equivalent, but you have lower noise, less mouth noise, your enunciation and pronunciation, and you don't mumble like I do sometimes. You're just cleaner about it than I am. So, if the two voices are similar, who are they going to choose? And there's this really bizarre thing that happens all the time that people do not take into account. They say this: my clients love me. Nobody's ever said anything bad about my audio. Okay. If you're a parent or you have a sibling who is male, okay, so if you're a parent, you have a teenage boy. If you're a sibling, you have a sibling who's a teenage boy. Here's something that I can guarantee you: they stink. Okay, so did I. So did every other male out there. There's this point in life where they we just don't realize that's what's happening as we're maturing and you go through and there's a few changes in there, and there's a period where young men do not know that they smell bad because one, they haven't had to use deodorant their whole life. They didn't need to take a shower once or twice a day. A little kid can get away without all that stuff, but nobody tells them except for their parents. And then, hey, they'll probably have a friend or two that goes, Joe, Don, you smell terrible. If they're a close friend, they might tell them, but not many. On the other hand, I took a little bus trip 6 months ago to my daughter's, couple hours away. I was going to work on her car, so what I did was I took a bus 2 hours to pick up her car, drove it back to my house where I have my tools and the stuff that I was going to use to work with her car for a couple days, and then I drove it back, and then I took the bus back home. So in so doing, I walk into this bus station, and there was a gentleman, a young guy, who had not showered in the last, I don't know, seemed like the last 2 weeks, but whatever. I don't know if it had been a day, a week, a month, it doesn't matter. What I did notice was he did not smell very good. And what did everybody else do in this situation? They just avoided him. I didn't hear a single person say anything negative to this person. We don't want to make him feel bad. It's not my business. If he smells terrible, and he did, but I don't know the circumstances, none of my business. I don't walk up to him and go, wow, you stink. That would be just plain old rude. So you could see, though, but I found it fascinating. I watched before we got on the bus, I watched that where he was sitting, people would come over and sit down. And then it was funny. It would take them about 30 seconds, 60 seconds to realize I need to get up and go get a drink of water. I need to go over and pretend I'm going to find something over here. Let me go look at this map. They just slowly would get up and move someplace else. And it happened 3 or 4 times. I saw people sit close to where he was and get up and move someplace else. And it just stuck in my mind as, oh, I know why they're moving, because I had walked past them and made a decision that I was not going to sit there. These people sat there and then realized, whoops, that really is not ideal. Nobody said a word. And you don't know the jobs you don't get because your audio is not up to a super high standard. So if you have great audio or you think you have great audio, fantastic. Just be sure to find somebody that has this type of combination: trained ears, above average monitors, also known as speakers, or super high quality headphones that also know how to listen at appropriate volume levels. Okay. Because one, if I listen too loud on any headphones or any monitors, I hear way too much and out of proportion, and our hearing changes if we listen to something very quiet. No, I shouldn't do that on podcasts, because if you're driving in your car, you're going to hate me there. So I'll skip that. If you're driving, if I listen to something very, very quiet and then I listen to it very, very loud, it sounds different, and that's normal. Our ears do not hear the same proportions of frequency at very low levels as they do at higher levels. So, and especially if you go really, really loud. And what I do find is many voiceover artists, when they're listening back and doing their editing, and many editors do this too, they listen at a level that's too loud. And then, of course, you hear more, but you also hear different proportions. The big takeaway here, if it sounds good, it is good if you are somebody who have prior skills and practice and equipment and the right kind of room to make that kind of evaluation. Any more that if I'm going to be the one that's working on your nutrition or your food, I'm your food taster. All right. Now, what you're not going to do is get a 10-year-old kid to be your food taster because you know they're going to go, you need to be eating Doritos, all sorts of candy, because that's what their tastes are. That doesn't mean it's good for us. It doesn't mean it's really even good. And some of that stuff I like, but nobody else would say it is, quote, good. White Castle hamburgers, all right? Those have a memory for me from my college days. They're terrible. Yeah, I have one as an adult and I go, wow, how did I like that? I mean, they're not terrible. They're good in small doses. And for me, they're a nostalgia, but they're not something I would want to base my professional life on. And it's the same with the sound. You know, the kids are going to love that movie theater popcorn and they're going to think it's great. And I did. And I over put the butter on it. I over put the stuff on it, but it was not ideal. And so when you hear people say, if it is good, if it sounds good, it is good, then what you want to do is say, okay, are they somebody who can evaluate? There are occasions where people succeed no matter what they do. You might be one of them, but instead of playing the odds and maybe my audio stinks, but nobody tells me, because no one wants to be the bad guy. I didn't want to tell that gentleman when I was on the bus, waiting to get on that bus that he really needed a shower. I wasn't going to say anything to him. It's none of my business. And people do not tell you when they're hearing something that's just okay. They just go ahead and get on with their life and find somebody else instead of me because they don't like the background. They realize that it doesn't sound right. They don't know the details. That's the way it is. Candy that I like. But it also means I miss opportunities. I grew up with. Okay. And that's really about you. You miss opportunities if you don't have your stuff up to a super quality spec. Higher quality never hurts you. Lower quality might hurt you. There are times where you'll get away with it. I got away with eating all sorts of junk for many, many, many years. I probably would be healthier, stronger, happier, smarter, brighter, better looking had I had better nutrition when I grew up. But I didn't, whatever. We all have something there. So just every time you hear if it sounds good, it is good, your little radar should go up. Some people are just saying it because it's kind of like, well, my audio is good. No one's ever told me it's bad. Cool. I don't want to learn anything else. Good enough is. I don't believe that. But it is sometimes like, if it tastes good, it is good. There's a lot of stuff you could eat out there that tastes good at first, gives you a tummy ache later. You don't get as much business later with weak audio. And some people just don't know what they don't know. Be sure that you're getting your audio evaluated by people who know and get some feedback. Paid, unpaid. Yeah, and my only caveat to that is just don't crowdsource it. You get so much information, and I'll do an episode on that. It's crazy what people say in public and people who really shouldn't be helping other people with their audio because they don't hear very well. That's a whole nother subject for another day. So be sure to check out Studio One Jumpstart and RX Jumpstart. If I can help you, be sure to find me in the Facebook group, friend me. Go ahead and subscribe to this. Make sure every week you'll have another episode coming up. I'm excited about some of the things that I already have slated for the future and some of the guests that will be on this show a little bit later. Got to walk before we run, just like everybody else. I really appreciate you being here. Look forward to seeing you next time on Audio Barnyard. Don Barnes, hope you have a fantastic day. Talk to you later. See you on the wires. Bye.